Quick Hits.
It's time for Hobby Quick Hits. Hobby Quick Hits. A sports card podcast where we tackle the hobby's hottest topics in depth to help you navigate the sports card landscape and enjoy the hobby we all love. Here's your host, John Newman.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 54 of Hobby Quick Hits. It's going to be a little different episode for sure, a little bit longer, just to forewarn you. What I usually do on our Sports Card Nation episodes, a Major League Baseball season preview show. And that was my plan. And me and my son started a new podcast called Hello Newmans. And we actually did a Major League Baseball preview episode on episode 3 of that show. And so I said, man, why not take the bulk of that show where we kind of covered what I would have probably did almost solo here and incorporate it into this show. And so that's what I did. I didn't take the whole show. I took probably 90% of it, though. And so what you're hearing is that show previewing the 2021 baseball season. And while we don't mention cards, it's coming from a sports show, obviously what happens out on that field directly correlates to card values and what happens to the cards, at least on the, speaking here to the baseball side. So, and I believe, maybe not everybody, but I do believe that if you collect baseball cards, you're in at least some capacity a baseball fan or a team fan or a fan of the sport. So you're going to hear us talk about who's going to win each division, playoffs, World Series, but you're also going to hear us talk about who's going to win the major awards. So you're going to hear us talk about Cy Young in both leagues, MVPs in both leagues, Rookie of the Year in both leagues, and obviously, again, those awards correlate to card value. So, hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to clock in about in an hour. When the show is done, I'm going to kind of come in with some closing words. So, enjoy the Major League Baseball preview episode.
Welcome to the Hello Newmans Sports Podcast.
Hello, Newman.
A weekly hour-long podcast covering the hottest topics in sports. Father and son, John and Jordan Newman, go toe-to-toe over the biggest sports topics. Here are your hosts, John and Jordan Newman.
We're going to start with the AL East predictions. I don't know if you want to go first or you want me to go.
I'll go first here.
All right,
I'll get the pain out of the way. Fortunately, I had to take the Yankees here. I just think they're without the Red Sox now pretty much being any contender. It's really the Yankees versus a hopeful Rays team. I don't think you can count the Rays out just because we've seen them kind of do it without having that much before. But I think the Yankees are clearly the favorites, and I think even if they don't play to their potential, they should still be able to win the division.
All right, I'm going to surprise you here. I think maybe a few other people listening or watching. I'm going with a young team that's a little bit older now, a year older from making a run. I'm going with a surprise pick here. I'm going with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm not going to take the Yankees or the Rays, but you may hear me mention the Yankees later on in another way. But I think it's the Blue Jays. I think that they acquired a couple pitchers. I think the young guys have experience. And going to the Yankees, Jordan, I'm not sold on their pitching. And they're just not the scary Yankees that spend a ton of money in the offseason and build like a murderer's row lineup. The Red Sox are rebuilding. They're not back yet. The Rays lost Blake Snell to the Padres, and I think they take a step back. I know they always surprise with pulling wins out of nowhere, and I think they still might be in the mix. But I just think this is the year they probably drop back, especially after the loss of Snell. And so I'm going with a young team. I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here. I think the Blue Jays get their I don't want to say just due, but I think the young guys play well. I think the pitching staff is enough to win that division. Remember, I think the Red Sox and the Orioles are going to be the two bottom teams, and these teams are going to load up wins against them. So you went with the Yankees. I went with the Blue Jays. For all we know, it'll probably be the Rays that win the division. But we'll see. Let's go to the NL East, our division as Mets fans. So this will be interesting. This time I'll go first. I'm going to pick, I could be a homer and take the Mets. I think they're going to be vastly improved. They have a real ownership that spends money. What scares me a little bit about the Mets still is I'm not really sold on their manager, Rojas, being the guy to get it done yet. They have talent there. Again, you may hear me mention the Mets later on in some picks, but I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves. I think they got a loaded for bear offensive lineup. They got a great pitching staff that they didn't really lose too much, and they re-signed Ozuna. I think that was big for them. If they would have lost him, I'd have even changed my answer. So I think the Braves don't run away with it. You got don't sleep on the Phillies either. The Marlins made the playoffs last year as well, so they're actually
Nationals,
the Nationals. So this division, honestly, Jordan, is probably one of the best, especially now with the Mets really stepping their game up. This division went from sort of middle of the road to maybe the best division in baseball, or definitely in the mix for the best division of baseball. I think the Braves, it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to come down to the final week, whoever wins it. But I'm going to pick the Braves this year. The Mets are moving in the right direction. I think they might make a managerial change in the offseason, but I think the Braves get it done in the division.
See, I went with the homer pick. I think the Mets win. I think they just added so much talent, and they added it where they really needed to. I think being as bad of a defensive team as they were and replacing that with Lindor, who's probably the best defensive shortstop, and then just adding depth. They really had no bench, and they had holes elsewhere on the team last year. And to have kind of depth now on the bench where you can mix and match guys, where last year they were really stuck with their lineup because you had no viable options coming off. And I think the pitching staff is probably as deep as any in the league. It's not maybe as high class as some, but I think throughout there's quality pitchers, where in the past you really had a steep drop-off from your first two. So I think the bullpen is iffy. I think that's really what decides what this season can be. And I think they have potential pretty much everywhere on the bullpen. I think there's plenty of guys that are huge, can go either way, can have a great season or it can be kind of be shaky. So I think that's really what decides kind of how this the division shakes out.
Well, listen, as a Mets fan, I hope you're right, and I hope I'm wrong. Now, I didn't say the Mets weren't making the playoffs. I just picked the Braves to win the division. We'll see. I think, again, this division's loaded.
And the thing with the Braves, too, is they're kind of in the same situation in the bullpen, as it's up in the air there, too. So I think really every team in that division has a shaky bullpen. So I think whatever team can kind of string guys together, I think might come out.
Well, Marlins fans may not like what I'm about to say, and Don Manley fans, the Marlins caught lightning in a bottle during a COVID year, short season. I think they kind of fall back. I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think they win some games. But Marlins fans, I hope you enjoyed the playoffs last year. I don't see a repeat of it. So
I think in any other division too, it'd be different. I think because you can fight against certain teams. I think just with this division, having that much talent pretty much on every other team is you can fight and be kind of a nitty-gritty team, but at a certain point, the talent can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think the Mets, like you said, I hope they win the division like you picked them. They're going to be better. I think be a shocker if they didn't finish better what they added. I mean, just more pitchers, and you have Lindor, potential MVP candidate. And so they're going to be improved. Is it enough? You say yes. I say not just yet, but they're knocking on the door. So let's go back to the AL and go to the Central Division. If you want to go first, you can. I know who I'm picking. So
I think I went the Twins. I think they're just a pretty consistent team. There's really nothing on the team that worries me. And I think the rest of the teams in that division, there's too much at stake where things can go either way. I think the Twins are just kind of the safe pick, the stable pick. And with coming off a season like last year, I think having a stable team is kind of the way to go.
So you want Minnesota. Again, we're gonna get off at different exits on this highway. I'm going, man, in the American League, I'm going with these young upstart teams, and I think it's their turn. They had a little rough go of it last year, but they've improved. I think the Chicago White Sox with that young, long ball lineup is going to get it done. Luis Robert, I think, could be a sleeper MVP candidate. Everyone forgets about Eloy Jimenez because of Luis Robert, and they're loaded. I think Luis Giolito is now becoming a number one pitcher in this league.
You've got Yoan Moncada too, who's really saying.
He had a great
Jose
year.
Didn't Jose Abreu win the MVP? Yeah,
this team's loaded, and I think the pitching staff has improved enough to win games they lost last year. I think they get it done. I think these young guns in the hitters lineup have big years. And again, I didn't pick the Twins, but you may hear me mention them later on. Don't forget there are wild card picks. But I think the Indians, when we look at this division, I think the Indians sort of fall back. They're going young too. They got a guy I love in Tristan McKenzie. But it's going to be his first full year, most likely. And, I think they're I don't know if you want to call it a rebuild or reload, but I think they're going to, they still got Shane Bieber, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I think they're going to be good. I just don't think it's going to be enough. The Royals, I think, are kind of near the bottom there. And, they got some young talent too. But this division's just a kind of a young teams, and I think the White Sox do enough to get it. So you went Twins.
And I like the Twins too because they are not similar teams, but the Twins, I'm pretty sure, led in homers last year or in the last full season. So I think with big, home run hitting teams, I think I'm just erring more on the side of age and experience. But like you said, if any of those dudes really on the White Sox turn out MVP-like seasons like they can, I think it could be a huge year. Yeah. I think they could really blow by a lot of people's expectations.
Even looking at my two picks on the first two picks on the American League side with the White Sox and the Blue Jays, no one can say I'm going chalk with my pick. So let's go back to the National League with the Central and. What do you think here, Jordan? Do you want to go first? You want me to go?
You can go this one.
All right, I'm going. I had to look just to make sure. I'm going Milwaukee. I'm going to Milwaukee Brewers. I love what they got. Yelich is back healthy. He missed a lot of time last year. This is another MVP guy who won an MVP. Another young guy I love, Keston Hiura. First spring training to bat, home run. I believe he's the real deal. And again, they got a decent pitching staff. I'm not in love with it, but they got some great relievers. And then you got Josh Hader on the back end. And I think when you look at those other teams in the division, the Cardinals, I think are still in the mix. I'm not, you can't win. It's hard to win every year. I think the Cardinals are there, but I don't think they get it done. I like the Brewers. I like the direction they're going. Again, I'm trending with young teams with kind of the situation we're in still with the pandemic. So along those lines, the Brewers are my choice.
You mentioned my team I picked. I think the Cardinals win. I think anytime you had a guy like Nolan Arenado with a team who was already really good and competing the year before, I think doesn't just adding a hitter like that, you really boost the whole team. I think just showing them they're going out to win, you've got good pitching. I just think they have that edge over the Brewers. And I like Christian Yelich, but I don't know if he can really reach that MVP level again. And I think that's where I take kind of the superstar from the Cardinals to lead them farther with Arenado there. And I think Arenado might kind of play a little better too, being on a team that's really going to compete and being not having that Colorado thing kind of hanging over his head, where the ball flies out, where now he can really just be on a competing team and play meaningful baseball.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, Arenado, Goldschmidt, I think they're going to score a run, Jordan.
Yeah, Goldschmidt. I forgot that.
Yeah, what I'm worried about with them is I really don't like their pitching staff, truthfully. Wainwright's coming back, but this guy's almost as old as me. I do like Jack Flaherty, but I worry about the injury with him. Miles Mikolas, you don't know what you're getting. He had the one great year 2 years ago. Last year, he sort of looked very hittable. So I think there's a lot of question marks. And when Adam Wainwright is one of your best pitchers, I don't know if that really is where you want to be with a staff. And, he's a great career, but, he's on the back nine, very close to the 18th hole. And so if they don't do it, like I don't think they will, it's going to be the pitching. I think they score runs. That lineup is definitely can go toe-to-toe with anyone, but it's just I think the pitching does them in, and that's why I want Milwaukee. I could see the Cardinals winning.
I think the team that helps both of our teams is the Cubs. I think the Cubs kind of take a step back and aren't going to really contend like they have in the past. I think the World Series, that big kind of core team, is really starting to fade away. And I think even just talking about trading a guy like Chris Bryant, I think they're on the way out. And I think if they even start a little sloppy, I think it might blow up even before they can get too bad. I think they might take what they can get. So I think it's really, like you said, it's going to be, I think, Milwaukee and the Cardinals. I just don't see, I think the Cubs are really going to help those two teams kind of get wins where years in the past they wouldn't necessarily get.
Yeah, I think the Cubs are going to, sorry, Cubs fans, I think it's going to be a long season, probably something you're not accustomed to lately. But I think it's going to be rough go. Don't be surprised if Bryant does get moved. Maybe that just, he's heard all the trade rumors. I think that relationship's probably soured. And if they get wild enough to just move them and cut ties, I think they're going to be in full rebuild mode. They got a rookie manager. I mean, he's not new to the game, but it's his first year, and David Ross. So I think they're going to really be in for some bumps and bruises. The Reds are the Reds. They lose Trevor Bauer. Aquino is not living up to the rookie year, and they've got a lot of holes in their game, and so they're going to be, the Reds played well last year. I think they sort of dropped back to what, unfortunately, Reds fans know so well, and that's a team that finishes under 500. So I think we both sort of agree this is sort of the Cards-Brewers race to the pennant there in the Central title.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the American League for the West, and I'll go first here with my pick. I'm gonna take this team. You probably know who I'm talking about by how I sort of lead into my pick. This is a team that struggled last year after some controversy the prior year, but I think the smoke and dust has kind of settled on that. I think these guys will have a chip on their shoulder to prove that they're good players and a good team, regardless of the scandal of Trashgate. And I think the Astros rebound. I think they come back. I think Altuve, who had a disastrous year last year, puts that behind him. I don't know if he's going to be an MVP type player, but I think he plays better. I think Alex Bregman is MVP caliber. They still got Correa. The pitching staff's pretty good. I believe you might see Forrest Whitley crack that rotation. A guy I love there that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think comes into his own this year is Kyle Tucker. And so I think this team, and when you look at this division, Jordan, it's not super strong. So it's not going to take a Herculean effort to win this thing. I think the Astros, get the monkey off their back, have a chip on the shoulder to prove, hey, we don't need to do that. We're to win again. And so I'm going Houston in this division. What say you?
I unfortunately had to pick the same team. I just think there's too much talent there. Their best competition last year was the A's, and they've taken a total step back and pretty much have shown they're not trying to compete for the division anyways. So really, to me, it just leaves the Astros. And like you said, you have Correa, you have Bregman. There's really not all that many holes. And I think with a weaker division, they should kind of run away with it. And I think, like you said, with Altuve, it'll be really interesting to see how he does with a full season, coming off a really bad season, like you said, last year, where the guys around him didn't take as much of a step back after the whole scandal. So it'll be kind of interesting to see, was it really benefiting him that much, or was it just a weird 60-game season where he just wasn't, himself? So,
well, he's not going to play his best. I mean, last year was probably one of the all-time worst seasons for an MVP winner, especially, and I'm not talking about someone in their last year. They're old, they're retired, their skills are diminishing, just atrocious. And I know many a fantasy league player cursing his name for picking him probably higher than the value he gave. So, let's talk about some of these other teams in this division. Oakland, I think, takes a step back. They're still doing sort of Moneyball. They have some pieces there. Don't get me wrong. I love Matt Chapman, and Matt Olson's pretty good. They lose Marcus Semien. He went to, I believe, Toronto to help their cause, and so
they lost Chris Davis too.
Yeah, although you won't miss the 200 average.
He said 247. He gets a lot more hate than he should, and I think they even threw Matt. I don't know how serious talks were, but they did throw Matt Chapman in talks. I understand the Moneyball aspect, but at a certain point, when you have guys, you got to attempt to keep them, or at least please them in some way. Just kind of bailing on them before, you really can make a run, especially after a shortened season where you did well. It doesn't make all that much sense to me, or really it seems anyone, but that's kind of what they did.
I think the A's are a couple years away. They got some really good young pitchers in A.J. Puck and Jesus Luzardo. So I don't think they're far off. I think they're they got that division sort of in their sights. I just don't think they have the firepower yet, and I don't think those young pitchers are quite ready yet for prime time. So I think the A's take a step back. Texas is Texas right now. They got a lot of holes. Again, they're going younger too. I think the surprise team here, Jordan, I'm not picking them to win the division. Obviously, we both picked Houston. I think the team you got to sort of look at, probably the biggest improvement. I don't think it's enough, but I think the Angels are better. Anytime you arguably have the best player in the game on your team, you're a sort of threat. I don't think they put enough around them. Although we got to see what kind of Ohtani they get. Is he going to pitch? Is he just going to hit? I mean, he's proven that even if he's just a hitter, he's a major league ball player, and he's a great pitcher if he stays healthy. And so I think the big question mark for the Angels, Jordan, is Ohtani. If he plays both ways, they can make things very interesting, I think, at least early. If Ohtani they shut him down off the mound and it's solely in the lineup card as a hitter. I think they finished second. I do think they move up to second place in that division. They passed the A's, and depending on a couple bounces their way, maybe they could sneak that division. And for a guy like Trout, who I believe does things the right way, but has had lack of postseason experience because of guys around him not doing what they need to do. Be nice to see the Angels get in the postseason. I'm not predicting that with my picks this year, but they're going to be better. They still got some work to do.
Yeah, and it's just too bad, like you said, being kind of where they are, kind of on the cusp where they can make a run, and they go out and really don't do anything in the offseason. And it's just sad with a guy like Trout, who's arguably, by the time he's done, is probably going to be the best player we've ever seen play baseball, and you have a front office who's very hesitant to get him help, especially when you have next door the Dodgers, who pretty much pay any top free agent that wants to come there. So seeing kind of that difference, and you have a guy like Trout who's locked in and has bought in, and you still haven't gone out and really, he's bought into you, and it's like you haven't bought into him really, unfortunately.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. This will tell you a lot about the Angels, Jordan.
Yeah.
They signed Kurt Suzuki. Doesn't move the meter much, but if you looked at the Angels' social media when they signed him, you would have thought they signed, Christian Yelich the way they trumped it up. So that's kind of where they're at. I think they got enough to probably get to that second place behind Houston. Maybe make it interesting if Ohtani has a healthy full season where he pitches and hits. But I think this is the year Houston comes back and says, don't forget about us too quick. So let's go to the NL West. And a lot of people think this is sort of a shoe-in pick, and it might be. I'm going to be honest with you. I went chalk, but I want to talk about that. I'll as you probably gathered from the way I just said it, I'm going with the Dodgers, the defending World Series champion. I don't like the guy. I think he's a schmuck, for lack of a better way of saying it. But they added a very good pitcher in Trevor Bauer. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. So I think they definitely win the division. I think that the most improved team, though, in that division, I'm not even saying they don't win it. I'm not making the pick. I like what the Padres did. They really, really loaded for bear, acquiring Snell, as we said already, from Tampa Bay, Yu Darvish from Chicago. That batting lineup is pretty good. You got the, Fernando Tatis, who was my MVP pick. He didn't win it. He finished second behind Freddie Freeman, but he might win it this year. And so, Manny Machado, this team's really, another pitcher on their staff that no one talks about, Danielson LeMay. I just love what they're doing. I think the Dodgers better keep up with the Joneses, because the Padres are going to be nipping at their heels. And so I'm going Dodgers. I think it's Dodgers, Padres. I think the Giants are trending sort of down. They're getting younger too with some of their young players. I don't think they're going to be in the mix. And the Rockies may vie for the worst team in baseball. Their best player left is Trevor Story, and there's rumors that
they want him out too.
Yeah, so I don't even know if you call this a rebuild or just a fire sale. They remind me of sort of Toys R Us. Like, are they trying to stay open, or are they closing the doors? And so I think it's a 2-team race here. Both of these teams are going to beat up on teams like the Rockies, and we'll see. But I'll be honest with you, I'm rooting for the Padres. As I'm not a Padres fan, but I tend to root for the underdog and the Dodgers. The Dodgers have become, to me, I don't know if you agree with this, Jordan, the new Yankees. The ones that spend a lot of money. You want to call them the evil empire. They don't have a Steinbrenner there, but They're just acquiring anyone they can, and
they're a little different than the Yankees, though, because they go about it differently, because they've stockpiled prospects. So
that's true.
Where in the past the Yankees would just give out these massive deals, these longer-term deals, the Dodgers really, the big deals they give are really short-term deals to these star guys, because they know, in 2 years, he's going to be fighting for a spot with the guy we already have in our system. So I think by drafting and getting the guys they've had and having such a farm system, they've afforded themselves to kind of just load up every year and kind of just look at the free agency list and kind of pick, like, if he wants a long or a short-term deal, if stuff kind of falls through, they're kind of there to catch him. And they've kind of done, it's worked out. And that's my pick as well. I think the Dodgers are just as exciting as it is to talk about the Padres and those guys and the talent. Once you start talking about the Dodgers, it's just as much talent, if not more. The pitching staff's loaded. You had a guy, like you said, who's not the greatest dude. He's kind of a schmuck, but he can still pitch, or at least he did last year. I think even if he regresses back to what he used to be, that's still a great number 3, because I think Kershaw is still pretty good. You get a great regular season Kershaw. I don't know if he's carrying you in the playoffs anymore, but you have Walker Buehler, who I think ends up being the ace of that staff and really comes through. And just pretty much every position on that team is just loaded. So I think the Dodgers just kind of overwhelm you with talent. And as much as the Padres have, I don't know if they have enough. I don't know if any team would have enough.
Yeah, arguably. I mean, they're the World Series champ. Yeah. They didn't really lose anyone.
Well, they added,
and they added Bauer. They even kept Justin Turner when it looked like he might leave. Keep an eye on the Bauer situation. This is a guy that loves himself more than other people love him. And you got a staff there. When you look at that staff makeup, Jordan, Walker Buehler is a quiet guy that just goes about his business. Kershaw, for as dominating as he's been through the years, is he's not a big talker, kind of quiet too, just does his job. Bauer's the anti-guy on that staff. Like, Bauer goes against everything that staff's about. He's very good, at least based on last year, but I can see him rocking the apple cart. We don't know everything that's going to happen behind closed doors, but I could see some issues there where Kershaw or Buehler maybe go to Dave Roberts and say, tell this guy just shut up and pitch like the rest of us and stop drawing attention to yourself. Yeah. I could see there being some waves. Does it make them, does it cause them to not win the division? No, I don't think it's to that level, but I think it could be interesting there if things get off track, if Bowers ruffles feathers or rubs people the wrong way or has some in-house locker room stuff. Dave Roberts, I know he just won a World Series. I think me or you could have managed that team to a World Series last year. I'm not a big Dave Roberts fan. So I think the Dodgers win it, but keep an eye. Keep an eye on the Bauer deal.
I think I agree, but I think it would be a different angle. I think you have 4 guys on that staff already that if they pitch well and Bauer takes a step back, they're arguably higher up on that staff. So I think you could get less of him talking, but more of kind of looks after if it ends up being Buehler, Kershaw, Maeda, and being a little bit better than Bauer is, but he's the one getting $40 million. He's the one kind of talking. I think that's when it might bring up questions.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, Jordan. That's what my
but I don't think it's as much as him, you know what I mean, talking just from doing it. I think if he struggles and they excel, it'll be more that issue. I think they know kind of what they're getting into when they signed him. So I don't think you're going to get it as much from just him doing it. I think it'll be more if he struggles, and then it starts looking like the guy that's making $40 million and talking isn't playing nearly like $40 million.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to the American League and pick our 2 wild cards. I'm going, I told you, I gave a little hints there when I said, you'll hear me talk about them again. I didn't pick them to win the division, either one of these teams, obviously, which is why they're wild card teams.
My one pick.
I'm going with the Yankees, who you picked to win the division. I think they get in the playoffs as a wild card. And another team you picked to win the division is my second wild card, and that's the Minnesota Twins. So I went Yankees and Twins. Kind of just say your picks, and we don't have to really, we kind of talked about them already.
I went White Sox, like you pretty much already talked about. They're a really good team. And I went, you're not going to like this pick. I think the Rays squeak it out and make it. I think Toronto, to me, like you said, is young, and they do have a lot of talent, but I think that's what hurts them. I think they don't have a true leader on that team. I think they have a lot of young guys that can hit, but I don't know if they have a guy in that lineup you just hit your backpack to and let, get there. I just think the Rays have figured it out, and I just there's something about I don't know, it's not something you would usually put your money on, but I think there's something about the way the Rays kind of do business, and I think the way the Yankees refuse to go out in the offseason and commit money elsewhere, I think might give them hope. So I think the Rays just figure it out.
Yeah, I don't disagree terribly. I just think the loss of Snell is a huge one. Yeah. I don't think they have enough, Jordan, to fill that hole completely. And I think, when you're talking about a wild card or division here, a few games can separate you. And I think I think Snell was those few games, and that's why I didn't pick him.
I normally would agree, but I think pretty much any other team, I think you lose a guy like Snell, it's a really big loss. I think with the Rays, the way they use starters and the way they use openers, I think they can kind of curb that loss more than other teams. And I think Tyler Glasnow's really turned into be that guy that, number
he's
one pitching prospect.
McKay, but he's young.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but not everyone can make the playoffs. So I just think they're going to be a little short at the finish line. So let's go to the NL. And I got a feeling we're going to be similar here.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I've taken the Mets as one of my wildcard teams. You had them winning the division. Either way, I hope we're both right in some capacity. Yeah. We're not watching someone else in the playoffs. I think they made enough improvements. I think even the attitude when you're a player and you have an owner who wants to win a World Series and quick and is spending money and leaving the checkbook open even after acquiring someone like a Francisco Lindor, I think that changes the whole attitude. That clubhouse, wasn't in it, obviously, but when you think about what the Wilpons ownership, what it was like coming to work every day, probably was very difficult. And now that there's going to be a fresh breeze and air in that locker room, and it's as someone who played baseball, playing sort of under different air like that, you're going to have a lot more fun. And I think this team is going to be fun to watch. I think they whether they win the division or what I think they'd get this year is the wild card with the division very soon. Either way, we'll take it. You just got to get in the dance and then beat teams and compete. So I went with the Mets as one of my wild card, and I went with the team I talked a lot about, so I don't have to say much more, but just mention them. I think the Padres get that second. I think it was, to me, I looked at the two teams I didn't pick for the divisions they were in. And I think, I thought that I kind of, when I made this other pick, I thought Cardinals, Padres, even the Phillies. And something tells me the Phillies, they'll be in the mix, but I'm going with that Padres team that I think would win that division had the Dodgers not been in it. And I just think they're going to load up on a lot of Rockies and Giants wins. And, the Phillies got to play the Mets and the Braves, and they're going to have you're asking me which schedule works better for me. I'd rather play the Rockies and the Giants a lot than the Phillies or than the Braves and the Mets. I think that's why the Phillies don't squeeze in to this wild card, and I'm going Padres and Mets. What say you?
I agree with the Padres. I think they're probably arguably second best, most talented team in the NL. They just happen the first is in the same division. And then I agreed, like you said earlier, the Brewers, I think between them and the Cardinals, I think both are going to be really good. And I think that division with the Cubs taking that step back, I think there's going to be a lot of extra wins available for whatever team doesn't win it. So I think the Braves, I think that was the tough team to leave out. I think it comes down Brewers and Braves and even, like you said, Phillies late. And I think that's, like you said, what hurts the Braves is I think coming down the stretch late, and the Phillies are a good enough team, they should be in it, that they're going to still be competing. And I think that's going to take some wins away that get them there, where the Brewers are facing the Cubs and teams that normally would take wins away from them that aren't this year.
Yeah. People forget the division you're in makes a lot of difference. When you have a couple bad teams like the NL West, where you can beat up on the Rockies and Giants and sweep series, and if you look at the NL East, where you have those four good teams, and the Marlins aren't terrible, you're going to split series and just kind of play some 500 ball at stretches, and I think that's the difference why I went with the Padres. So our picks were very similar, maybe not for division winners, but when we step back and look at all the teams we picked, very similar. Yeah. Just two differences. I picked the Blue Jays and the Braves where you didn't, but most of the others.
Yeah, I went Brewer or no. What did I go that you didn't? Oh, Rays and Rays and Twins.
Yeah. So I think we're with the exception of a couple of teams, we pretty much very similar pages. Let's go on to the award winners here, and let's start like we've been doing in the American League with the Cy Young winner, and I'm going with a guy. He's not probably the favorite for most people, but I picked his team to win that AL Central, and I think he's going to have a big year. And he came on last year, showed a lot of promise. What the Nationals thought they had in him before they traded him to the White Sox. I think he makes that jump to be that ace number one. He's got great stuff. He throws hard enough. And I think it's this Lucas Giolito. I think if the White Sox win the division, like I'm predicting, he's going to be the ace of that staff. I think he's going to win a lot of games. He's going to have some run support. And, I'm going, I know there's a lot of contenders. You got Garrett Cole in New York. You got Shane Bieber in Cleveland. Run, in Toronto. I'm probably forgetting someone. When I made my picks for the show, I believe in them, but I also wanted to sort of think a little bit outside the box here. And so I'm going Lucas Giolito for your AL Cy Young winner.
So with you thinking way outside the box, I went in the box. Shane Bieber, I think he's just, to me right now, clearly the best pitcher in the AL. I think Cleveland kind of being a contender and not having all too much behind him with Tristan McKenzie coming up. I don't know if he's ready. I think they're really going to ride Shane Bieber a lot throughout the season. So I think he won it last year. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities again. And I just think he's really starting to come in to his prime. So I don't think he takes really any step back. And I think he could almost improve this year.
Yep. All right, let's go to the other league. I got a feeling, I don't actually know your pick. I obviously know mine. I got a feeling we may have the same guy here. It might be the homer call. Yeah. But I think we both went, you can tell me if I'm wrong, we both went Jacob deGrom. I think with again, going to all the things I already said, that fresh air in that locker room, some more help behind him with Carrasco. And he had a great year last year. He didn't win the Cy Young, but he had a very capable year. He's still young. There's going to be no drop-off. And I think he's going to have more run support. You had Lindor, and, you got some speed in Pilar. And I think Brandon Nimmo is going to play better.
And you had McCann too. You have a guy that can throw guys out.
A real catcher. For the first time since probably Gary Carter in New York. Be honest with you,
Mike, we had Piazza too.
Yeah, I forgot. No offense to Mike, but probably since Piazza, in all reality, it's our first real catcher. And so, a big difference with the Mets. I think DeGrom has a crazy good year. I think he's a quiet guy, but I think he was disappointed that he didn't win it again. I know it's something he wanted to do. I think he's going to take it to a challenge. I think there's going to be a chip on the shoulder with that Mets pitching staff. When it looked like Trevor Bauer was joining them, it didn't. And him being the reigning Cy Young, I think there's going to be some guys that don't want to see him hold that award up again.
You've already had Syndergaard and Stroman have gone at it with him.
So I'm going to DeGrom. And truthfully, I don't even think Bauer is in the mix. If I had to pick a second place finisher, I'll take a Dodger pitcher, and it's going to be Walker Buehler. Yeah. I think Kershaw's a little long in the tooth. I think Walker Buehler's their true number one now, believe it or not, regardless of what Bauer's getting paid and what happened last year. I take if I had to pick a Dodger pitcher, only one, I'm taking Walker Buehler, but I'm going to take my guy Jacob deGrom to get the award back.
Yeah, I agree. I went with DeGrom, and I think even last year, if it's not a COVID-short season, he wins it again. I think if that season plays out like it normally would, you would have him eventually overtake Bauer, and I think that's kind of where it was going anyways. And I think another thing that's going to be different this year is the Mets are going to win. I think a lot of those games he gives up 2 runs, and it's a no decision. And I think maybe his ERA don't change, but you add 3-4 wins to his win total, and wins aren't a pitching stat and they shouldn't be held to it, but that does make a difference to voters. You see a rise in wins, regardless what it matters, it does change what they think, and I think that's going to be huge. And like you said, he's got padding behind him now. There's consistency all throughout the staff, and it's not like before where they had a good staff, but there was so many hit or miss guys where he turned out to be the constant, the only consistent guy. Now it might not be as many hit or miss guys, but they have consistency where he can rely on the guys behind him and not have to be, Jake DeGrom. He should be Jake DeGrom, but he doesn't have to be every time.
Yeah, no, I think there'll be a lot less pressure on him, play a little looser, and that usually equals good results. All right, let's go back to the American League. Let's go to a different award, and this will be interesting. AL Rookie of the Year. And when I was making sort of my list, like who could win this thing, my pick I didn't have on the list, and I'm going to be curious to see what you picked. I didn't have him on my list because I didn't think he was still eligible to win it, yet he is. And so I'm going to pick him based on that. I'm not saying I'm completely sold on this guy to be what a lot of people are already making him out to be, but being he's still rookie year eligible, I think he's going to have a good season. He's going to be a full-time starter. He's going to be on a team that you have making the playoffs where I don't, but Randy Arozarena is going to be my AL Rookie of the Year. I didn't think he was eligible. He is. I'm going to pick him based on that. I think he puts up decent numbers. I like some of the other guys, though, in this league. A guy I love that probably should have been up last year. Former Met, really got a raw deal on that trade. Thanks, Brody Van Wagen. And Jared Kelenic is a guy I love. I think he makes a run. It probably would have been my pick had Randy Arozarena not been ineligible, but he is eligible. And another guy I like sort of in the mix too is Ryan Mountcastle from Baltimore, who's still eligible. And a sleeper pick, I'll go with a guy I mentioned too already, a guy I love, Tristan McKenzie with Cleveland. But I'm going to pick Arozarena. He's a power hitter. Chicks dig the long ball, so do writers, and so I think I'm going to go with Randy to probably as the favorite. I'll go chalk there.
Yeah, I went the same thing. I think, like you said, I have the Rays making the playoffs, and for that really to happen, I think he's got to be pretty much the Rookie of the Year. And like you said, I think I went safe here because it's so much up in the air. I'm going to take a guy that last year showed he can be a hitter. He can be a major league hitter. So no matter what, I think giving him a full season, I think there's a potential. He might take a step back, but I think he did so well last year that even a step back through a full season is going to be probably Rookie of the Year worthy. And I think he's going to be kind of what they lean on to be that anchor in that lineup.
Yeah. Let's go to the NL. Now here again, this was another guy I thought of, but when I was thinking of him, I said, man, I think he pitched too much and he's not eligible. And then I found out he is eligible. So again, I went with a guy that when you hear his name, you don't think they're a rookie anymore. And same thing with like Arazarena in the American League. And that's Ian Anderson from the Braves. I think he's on a fast track to be an ace number one. Some might argue he's really there now. And so, I really only have two guys on my NL list, Jordan, with Anderson being one. And the other guy, the Pirates, we didn't even talk about them. They're so terrible that me and you probably could try out and at least get like a bench spot. I'm not saying we'd start, but we'd probably make the team. But they got a young player, son of Charlie Hayes, named Ke'Bryan Hayes, and played very well when he got called up last year. He's still Rookie of the Year eligible. I think what'll hurt him is that team's just going to lose a lot of games. I don't think he's going to have a lot of guys on base when he bats, so his RBI total is probably going to be lower than it should be. And I think Ian Anderson, playing on a Braves team that I still have winning that division, is going to win Rookie of the Year. So I'm going Ian Anderson over Ke'Bryan Hayes.
See, I went Ke'Bryan Hayes. I think he even had Rookie of the Year votes last year. He had a couple, 1 or 2 second place ones. So I think I kind of went safe. I think having a full season, having not necessarily real spring training, but having something much more real than last year, I think is going to benefit a lot of these guys who played and looked good last year. So I think he kind of is able to take that next step, being able to really be on a major league team and come up, starting the year and not being, brought up mid-year.
Yeah. All right. We'll see. We went opposite. So one of us, we're probably both wrong that someone that just comes out of nowhere, out of left field, and wins the award. Maybe literally that might be a left fielder.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the AL and the big award right here. The AL MVP. And obviously when you talk AL MVP, the first name that comes to the top of the list is a guy called Mike Trout. And he's very well, he'll be probably a contender every year that he probably plays in the major leagues. I'm going to go with someone else here, though. I talked about this team kind of getting the muck off the back, trying to prove the doubters wrong. I'm going Alex Bregman. I think it's Bregman, Trout. I think they both have monster years, and I think the voters who have voted for Trout, a lot of times, Trout's won it multiple times. When you have looking at two guys that have similar type of years, crazy good years, one team wins the division with Houston. The other team with Anaheim is still in the same division, doesn't win it. I think that gives the edge to Alex Bregman. So I'm going Bregman over Trout. I think you got to keep an eye on maybe a White Sox guy and Robert and Jimenez, maybe pulling up the rear. And, Brea won it last year. I don't think he repeats. And, I'm going with the team that's going to make, kind of put themselves back on the map. Alex Bregman's a very, very good player, and I think he has a great year for a team that wins their division and takes down the AL MVP.
I went with Mike Trout. I think, like you said, the fact the Angels are competing, I think is gonna put his name out there a little bit more. And I think the fact he's been second or winning it when they've been as bad as they were. This year, with a little bit more hype and a little bit more of a chance to kind of make a run, I think it's Mike Trout. You know what he's going to do. There's not really a question of whether he's going to hit or field. He is. It's just, is anyone else going to have a superstar year? Because if someone else doesn't, have an insane MVP year, it usually kind of defaults to him. And I think he probably might have that boosted up year just because he's got a little bit more hype around him. There's a little bit more buzz, and there is that potential to win the division. So I think he does have that little push just because it's not the same old Angels team.
Yeah. Well, if you think you want to argue against Mike Trout, you're wrong, because I don't think you can. It's all valid points. I just sort of went with sort of that horse on the outside that comes down the stretch and pulls it out. I went with Bregman. Let's go to the other league. This league, I think, is more loaded. I think when you look at the two leagues, I'm going to name 5 or 6. Before I even tell you who my pick is, I'm going to name 5 or 6 guys that could win this award. Let's start off with the guy who won it last year, and Freddie Freeman. You got someone like Fernando Tatis Jr. in San Diego, who I would have been my pick.
Acuna is on the same team as
Acuna. You can throw Lindor's name. I think he's going to take some adjustment to the National League, but he's a great player in his own right. You don't make that move if he's not. There's just a lot of great players. Bryce Harper is due for a Bryce Harper bounce back year. I'm not saying that it's going to happen for sure. But Philly paid him a lot of money. I don't think they're getting their return on their investment yet. Is this the year he earns that paycheck? I mean, the list goes on and on. Even Ozzie Albies in Atlanta's a great second baseman that gets just overlooked because that lineup is so strong. We talked about 2 guys in St. Louis, and Goldschmidt and Arenado, that are MVP capable. So when you look at both these leagues, the National League is wide open for your MVP race, where the AL, I sort of see it as just sort of 2 guys near the top. And so all that wind up, let me give you my pick. And let me give you a little bit of a qualifier here. He has to stay healthy. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. If he stays healthy and plays the full year, I think he wins it. He's a young guy who, to his credit, plays balls out, plays hard, but that makes him sort of an injury risk because he plays to that level. But I'm going Ronald Acuna Jr. with the Braves. As a Mets fan, I don't like to give Braves players awards necessarily, but he's a great young talent. 5 tool. Again, the injury risk is always there with him. He's just I call him like a violent player. I mean, he swings hard out of his shoes. He sometimes he runs hard. He's sliding all around. And that's how he sort of got hurt the one time. And anyone can get hurt, don't get me wrong. He makes me nervous. If I was a Braves fan, as much as he's exciting to watch, he'd make me nervous to watch just because on any given play, something could happen. So I'm going Acuna Jr. If I had a second choice, there was a guy I almost picked. There was a guy I thought should have won it last year. I think he comes back. He just got paid. And that's Tatis Jr. So I'll go Acuna, Tatis Jr.
I went Lindor. It's another homer pick, but I think New York is huge. I think that's really what's big. I think if they end up winning the division, they kind of coincide. Same with with the Rays. I think with the Mets, if they do win the division, a lot of it's going to be from Lindor. And I think it's going to be noticeably from Lindor because you're going to have that difference made up defensively. And I think he's a hitter and he can hit. I think the big name with being in New York is going to be huge. And I think if it's not him, I think Arenado's got a really good shot. I think both guys who were traded have a good shot. And I think the other guy that could win it, and I think he's the better young player in the NL East, is Juan Soto. I think he's very similar to Acuna, but I think to me he's the better hitter. He's the more consistent hitter. He doesn't reach nearly as much as Acuna. he might not be the defensive player Acuna is, but I think at the plate, Soto is a little bit more polished, and I think he can be really the anchor for the Nationals, and they've kind of committed to him being that guy. So I think Soto kind of came up when you were listing off the guys. I think he's kind of got a really good shot, especially on the Nationals team that's competing, but will need a guy to step up, and I think he could almost be that guy this year.
Yeah, I like Juan Soto. I kind of out of sight, out of mind.
I almost just talked myself into taking him.
And I will say, if Joe Buck was here, he'd say, "Hey, do you know Juan Soto's 22 years old now?" So you went with the homer pick, man. I hope you're right. I mean, that would be incredible.
I'm almost leaning more Soto now, but I think the publicity around being in New York and Lindor could really help that push. And I think seeing that jump in wins could really just show voters, might be something voters notice.
Yeah, I hope you're right, Jordan. I don't want you to be wrong. I'm not making that pick, but I hope I'm wrong and you're right as a Mets fan. I'm going to stick with Acuna. I like Tatis Jr. And I'll throw Soto in that mix too. Soto's almost a safer play than Acuna because he tends to stay healthier, his style of play.
Yeah, and I think that's what scares me with Acuna. Not scares me. He's going to be a great player. He's going to be a superstar. It's just Soto, I think, has a chance to be one of the best hitters, if not the best hitter in all of baseball for a long time. So I think there's not many guys that would stand up to Soto anyways.
All right. So this is our last category here, Jordan. I'll let you pick who you want to go first, me or you. It's World Series pick. And what we have to do here is pick the matchup. One team from the American League, one team from the National. Who wins it? If you want to say how many games it goes.
You can start. I didn't read this part.
All right. So I'm going.
I know who my enemy is.
I'm going. I really have a love affair for this team this year. I do. And I could be way off the mark. But I think I'm not picking the World Series. I'm just telling you the teams that make it. I got the Padres coming out of the National League. I think the Padres face the Dodgers in the NL Championship Series, and I think if you want to call it an upset, I think their pitching steps up. I'll call right now. Bauer has a meltdown, and the Padres beat the Dodgers to get to the World Series. And on the other side, again, I've been talking about them a lot, the redemption story. I think the Astros come out of the AL to represent the AL. So I got it. My two picks, Astros, Padres. I see this being a 7-game series. I could make a case for either team, but I have to pick one. I'm going to say the Astros over the Padres in 7 games.
I disagree. I think the Dodgers just overpower pretty much everyone. I just don't know if anyone really stands a shot. And in the AL, I think the White Sox make it. I think the White Sox sneak in through the wild card, and I think the AL, to me, there's just so much that anyone can really win it. And I think there's so much talent and upside on that White Sox team. I don't know if they put it together enough to win the division, but I think by the end of the year, especially with those young guys finally getting a feel, I think they might really turn the corner right when they need to, right when the playoffs come around, and I think they could really end up getting hot and making that push to the World Series. And then I think I'm going to take the White Sox to win it. I just don't see it's so hard to repeat. And like you said, I don't really trust Dave Roberts in big situations. And I just think there's something about that White Sox team. And you have really 3 young prospects who could arguably be superstar guys this year with Jimenez, Luis Robert, and I think Moncada is really starting to turn the corner as well. And you have Jose Abreu, who's a veteran that just won the MVP already. So I think there's just so much talent and upside there that I think they turn the corner just at the right time.
Man, well, we both had interesting picks. We both went with young, up-and-coming teams. What'll be interesting is they might be 1 year away. We're sort of picking them maybe 1 year too soon. Maybe we have in 2022. Wouldn't it be funny? Yeah. We had the White Sox Padres World Series. So I went Padres with them upsetting the Dodgers. So if the upset doesn't happen, I'd have the Dodgers versus the Astros again, and that would be interesting. Rematch of Trashgate, and you think the Dodgers won't be fired up for that one? You better believe it if that's what happens. So
I just don't buy the Astros pitching with Verlander being hurt, and even if he comes back, I just don't know if they have enough.
Yeah, I'm still kind of holding out, and I'm not an Astros fan, obviously, but something tells me maybe they pull off a deal to acquire a hurler or pitcher that can aid them, in crunch time. And so, especially when they know they're going to be in the mix to get there, I think they pull the trigger. Maybe they trade even someone, Jordan, like a Kyle Tucker to get an ace 1 or 2 type pitcher, from a team like the Cubs, let's say, or someone else.
That's what I think will be interesting. Is you had a lot of teams who were on the fence about selling, this off season. It'll be interesting to see when, the season starts unfolding. Will those teams really start fire selling? You'll see those Chris Bryants, maybe Matt Chapmans, Trevor Stories get moved.
Yeah, and then pitchers too. Like let's say the Phillies struggle and they know they fell too far behind. Maybe they sell a pitcher, trade a pitcher to the other league, a Zach Wheeler to get a Kyle Tucker or a piece like that, in a Houston Philly deal. That's the crazy thing about the trade deadline is when teams are out of it, they're gonna go for prospects. So we made some interesting picks. I'm sure some of them will be right. I'm sure some of them will be wrong. But that's the fun of it. All right. I hope you enjoyed myself and my son Jordan there breaking down what we think is going to happen in the year ahead in baseball. We threw out some names and award winners, and be interesting to see it all play out. I'm looking forward to hopefully a full year, not a shortened pandemic type year like last year. As a Mets fan, I'm definitely excited. We have new ownership. We got Lindor, and we'll see what happens. By the way, that show, Hello Newman's, little shameless plug for that. Tuesdays, 8 p.m., we do that live every week. If you don't catch it live, that's okay. You can find it on most major podcast platforms. The name of the show is Hello Newman's Sports Podcast. So check that out. Like and subscribe that if you like hearing sports. We talked about baseball that episode, but we'll be talking all 4 major sports in most weeks normally. So we just did our baseball preview episode there. As always, we're going to finish up with giving out our social medias, but thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Hey folks, thanks for listening to the show. Wanted to give out our social media links where you can follow the show even when you're not listening to it. On Twitter, we are at Hits Hobby, HitsHobby, HITSHOBBY. On Instagram, we are at Hobby Quick Hits Podcast, at Hobby Quick Hits Podcast, all one word. Our website is www.sportscardnation.net. Look for the link to Hobby Quick Hits. You'll find us there. And you can always text us on our text line, area code 315-491-0239.